First off, I just want to start off by saying a big thanks to Gabe and Scott and Mike and Stuart and all the guys that put this on. You guys have done a dynamite job. I'll just tell you, in Missouri, we get so much attention. To be honest, there's only really 4.5 of us, I guess. Scott came on a little to the end, but for the most part, early on, there was really only 4 of us that got a lot of the things going in Missouri. So when I look around a room like this and see this many leaders and this much talent in a room, I'm not overhyping you guys. This is unbelievable power you guys have. There is no reason in the world why Texas should not be one of the #1 states in play in 2019. I think the #1 state in play will be Florida. Once we get Rick Scott out of there, I think Florida is our #1 target for 2019. But I honestly, with my heart, Texas should be #2. And I'm planning to follow that up. I'm planning to come down here several times, hoping to do some events in Dallas and Houston and San Antonio and anywhere else that I can help out. But like I said, when I look around the room and see the talent, and especially when we went around the room and heard the backgrounds of some of you guys, it's phenomenal to realize the power that you guys have in the room. #1 key, as we talked about over and over, is you've got to have that unified front and realize most of us in this room, I think, agree on between 90 and 99% of everything. And unfortunately, we have a tendency to gravitate to the 1 or 2% that we disagree on. And that's why we've been annihilated in so many states. The opposition, the Bar Association, is just rock solid in their unity and just annihilating us. So we can't have that. We've got to be focusing on what we agree on. #1, we've got to make sure that we all agree that there should never, ever be a time on Facebook where you ever mention somebody's name in a negative light. There's just, that's almost grade schoolish. I mean, never. You know, if you'll notice, never once have I ever mentioned anybody's name, an organization, or anything like that in a negative site. If you have a problem with somebody, take it offline. Give them a phone call, send them a private message, but don't put anything, because you're just asking for problems, and we've got enough problems right now. We've got to stay unified. So, yeah, in Missouri right now, as I said, most of you know I have a background working in I've been in the political arena for 30 years. I served on the Small Business Policy Council, and in that role was able to work on getting a lot of legislation passed. And when you add up all the people that follow all the pages, now obviously there's some crossover and duplicates, but if you factor that in, there's probably 150,000 people represented when you add up all the Facebook pages of everybody in this room and take out the duplicates. That is an unbelievable footprint. Not once in all the time that I've been working on legislation in 30 years did I ever have a potential of 150,000 people for a call to action. So you guys, it really should be a done deal. We just need to figure out a way to stay united. I know some of you know I'm friends with Alveda King, the niece of Martin Luther King Jr. And so I've really become a student of the genius of what Martin Luther King did. And the best thing that he was a connector. He figured out, if you study the march and all the people that showed up to the famous talk that he gave when he gave the I Have a Dream speech, it's amazing how many groups absolutely hated each other and were just diametrically opposed to each other, but they did have one common goal. And so in this room here, we've got people, some of you hate me. I'm okay with that. We're never going to get everybody in the world to love everybody. So I literally am not offended at all if you hate me. But I think hopefully you'll have respect that I'm trying to get the thing done. And we've got to have that amongst everybody else. But what we need to do is realize, if in a prime example is in Missouri. We've got Jeremy Roberts in Missouri. Jeremy and I, personality-wise, are almost polar opposites. That should be a big heads up that we need each other. Because I am reaching people that probably would never relate to Jeremy. And Jeremy's relating to people that can never relate to me. So what we've got to figure out in this room, each of us are reaching a small little mini demographic target market that if we can all unify and figure out how to use each other. Now there's going to be macro strategies and micro strategies. My strategy when you're dealing with legislators has to be more based on relationships. When you're dealing with legislators, you can't be doing protests, you can't be doing things like that. Not that those things are bad. So I mean that very sincerely when I say I never want to put people down who do protest. But to a legislator, legislators will not act based on protest. Legislators will run. So the key then, if you're going to have protest, you need to know who the people are who do protest. And that's one of the genius that Martin Luther King did. Martin Luther King knew exactly who to call when he needed certain things done, that he wasn't present in the room when they were done, but there were different strategies. And so in a little bit we'll turn things off and I'll give you some ideas, but we don't want all this broadcast to the world. But within this room is everything we need to get the bills passed in Texas in 2019. It really is. A couple things, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but a couple things that as we went around the room to make sure that we focus on that we've always talked about, it's not about father's rights, it's not about mother's rights. It's got to always be focused from the child's perspective. A legislator could care less about father's rights. They could care less about mother. We've got to always be focusing. It's always about the children. So you've got to really work on it, and it's hard to develop that mentality, especially if you've been talking, from a father. And you've also got to realize you've got to keep a balance, because there's a huge difference between saying that it's not about father's rights and saying fathers aren't affected. So you have to acknowledge the fact. I think as we went around, somebody said that it may have been you that said that, hey, I'm a father, so I come from it from a male perspective. So there's nothing wrong with announcing your background. So you've got to make sure that if a mother comes and talks about from her perspective, we don't attack her and say, well, it's not about mother. It's okay to give your perspective. Just give the prelude if you can that, hey, I'm talking from a mother's perspective, because Jody brings up a good point. Nationally, there's so much talk about that it's always dads, it's always dads. If a mother doesn't have access, society kind of thinks, oh, there's something wrong with them. And so we need Jody's perspective so people can understand, well, wait a minute. Seek first to understand. Try and put yourself in Jody's shoes from a mother's perspective. She really has going on the same type of thing that the dads have going on. So we have to value and respect what Jody talks about when she talks about mother's rights. When somebody comes from a father's rights advocacy and they're talking about fatherless statistics, we need to make sure to differentiate between talking about father's rights and talking about analytical data that's out there. There are statistical data that has shown of the fatherless statistics, of the teenage pregnancy rates, the behavioral problems, the drug use, and it's okay to quote those statistics. So you can't attack a person and say, well, you're only talking about father's rights. No, we're just bringing up some statistics. We're not saying there's not other statistics, but we can't go too far either direction and say, we just want to talk in the middle. We've got to acknowledge that both sides have good issues that we can bring up. So make sure that we come from both perspectives. I think one big thing, and I always hate to sound like I'm condescending or something, but I've always tried to be a good reader. Now, I think most of you know I've got a brain cyst, so my reading level is now down to the 6th grade level, which is really frustrating for somebody that's loved to read all my life, that I can't do it and comprehend anymore. I read about 3 pages at a time, and then it's just all mush up there now. But in my heyday, I used to try to read at least a book a week, and I strongly encourage you to read books like Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I just honestly believe you will never be effective if you're trying to get legislation passed if you haven't read that book. That's the #1 people skills book of all time. Strongly encourage you to read Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Leaders. Florence Littauer, Personality Profiles. I tend to be very analytical. Facts, figures, data. I was such a dork, and I'm still a dork, but in school I was a little guy, so I didn't talk a lot, because if I talked I'd get beat up. So I kind of stood to myself, and so I didn't have a lot of friends. Matter of fact, true story, I remember there was this place called Helen Fitzgerald's in St. Louis. And years ago I used to work on the USA for Africa staff with Michael Jackson, and so I used to love to go dance and everything, learned all the dance routines for Billie Jean and all that. And so I would go out to these nightclubs in St. Louis, and when Michael Jackson came on, everybody kind of knew that I did the dances and everything. And so I would come out and do the Billie Jean dance with the hat and everything like that. But aside from that, this is how I spent my Friday nights. I'd stand over a corner by myself, and I'm such a dork, I don't know how to talk to people. So I'm just sort of acting like I'm looking at people across the room. Nobody's looking at me, nobody notices me. And for like an hour or so, and I'm just waiting for the next Michael Jackson song to come on so I can go out on the dance floor and dance and enjoy myself. And then I spend another hour waiting for Thriller to come on, and then I go home for the night. Never talk to anybody, never engage in conversation whatsoever. And but I love facts, figures, details. And what I noticed is I started drawing a circle of friends that were all just like me. We could all, you could get spreadsheets out and calculators and talk about beta ratios, and man, we were in hog heaven, all 4 of us. And then I started realizing there's another segment of the population that really thinks we're kind of a dork. So we needed to find out how to relate to the other 3 personalities. That Florence Littauer book will open your eyes as to how to talk to legislators, to try and analyze when you're talking to a legislator, which one of the 4 personality temperaments are they? Because you need to change the tone of your voice when you're talking to each one of them based on their personality temperament. So I strongly encourage you to read that one. Last one is Michael Gerber, E-Myth. Unbelievable the way he sort of lays out strategies for systematizing things, which is essentially what we need to be doing. But I strongly encourage you to sort of be a lifelong learner. Realize too that you've got to play your position. I always give the example of a football team. Not that I ever played football, but on a football team, the quarterback, all they're supposed to focus on is their role as a quarterback. They don't need to worry about, is the guy going to block in front of me? They've got to have trust and confidence in their team that if we call a play and this person's supposed to block this person, I don't have to worry and look over, uh-oh, is he blocking him? He's just got to have the total confidence to know, okay, we called the play, their position is to block, my position is to throw the pass. We've got to make sure that as we come up with strategies out in this room, there's going to be people that are great at research. There's going to be people that are great at maybe even just scheduling appointments. There's going to be people that are tallying the spreadsheets and to figure out where all the legislators stand and who are the flip ones that we need to talk to. Everybody has to realize you're much better off picking a position than trying to be the one-all answer for everything. In Missouri is a prime example. Because of the brain system, I'm horrible at reading, so I'm not good at all on the verbiage. So if anything comes up with a question of verbiage, my standard response is I need to run it by Jeremy. It's not my area of expertise. I trust Jeremy. I've got total confidence in him that whatever he says, I'm for it. We've just got that much of a friendship at this point. And he's got enough trust and confidence in me to know that my specialty is more building relationships with legislators, the negotiation with legislators, figuring out the political strategy, which we'll talk about in a second, the difference between a legislative strategy and a political strategy. But you've got to understand your role and just play whatever your role is. And find somebody else who can fit all the other roles instead of trying to play every position, which all of us, myself included, when you're first thrust into this situation, most people don't know what to do. So the theory is they try and do everything. What I encourage you to do, before I ever formed Americans for Equal Shared Parenting, I was active for about 2 years, but more from a studying role. I was trying to figure out what are the strengths and the weaknesses in the community across the country, and where is there a gap? If there wasn't a gap, I would have never formed that. I would have much rather just been a part of another organization. But I just figured with the specific niche of what I'm trying to do, of create a national platform to help educate, empower, and enable different states across the country without being overbearing to those states, there was no niche. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to open that niche. But I waited to study to find out what's out there. What I encourage everybody to do is do some analysis, twofold. Number one, on yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? You've got to analyze yourself first. And then analyze as a community, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses? If you've got people that are just great at research, you know, for me, what a headache that is relieved, because I'm horrible at that. It needs to be done. But I can't keep it up here. My comprehension and my retention level isn't good. But it's good to know that if I'm going to a Senate hearing tomorrow, and I know there's some pieces of research, it's good to know there's people that I can make one phone call and say, can you do me a favor? I need information on this, 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 and this. And now I can focus more on what I need to worry about is, okay, who are the senators going to be in that hearing tomorrow? What's their personalities? What's their background? What's their hot button? What issues? And I can focus on that. Maybe Dawn can help me out behind the scenes on the research, and we can all come together as a team. So you got to try and figure out what your specialty is going to be. A couple of areas that we do need issue research. You're going to need some people that are great negotiators with legislators. And you're going to have to identify who those people are. I don't know yet. For you guys, you may start identifying. But you're going to have some people like that. I'm willing to help come in at any time that you need me. But two things about that. Number one, legislators don't want to hear from somebody out of state. I can add a little bit of credibility, but they don't want to hear from me. They want to hear from you guys. So what we need to do is, I'm willing to partner with people. Sometimes it helps for me to come in occasionally and pop in, because some of you know I was up in Michigan the other day, in Illinois, and it adds some credibility for them to realize, oh wait, this group's working on 17 pieces of legislation. It gives credibility that yes, there's a national thing going on, and somehow they perceive me as some kind of an expert, which is funny because I'm really not an expert. All I did is take the information everybody else shares with me, and I convey it in a format. But sometimes it helps. But the majority of work is going to have to be done for you. And like I said, I'm willing to help in any way I can, whether it's conference calls, whether it's coming down, assisting you guys. But you've got to form the Texas team, if you will, of you guys coming together. So we're going to need some people that are negotiators. Some people, your role is the scheduler. And that's not always the same type of person. As you know, if you've been in kind of sales or marketing, you need somebody that can get past the gatekeeper to schedule an appointment. Sometimes you're a lot more powerful having a third party do the edification, if you will, rather than you call up. So I'll give you an example. If I call up senators in Washington, D.C. and say, hey, I'm Mark Ludwig, I'd like to meet with so-and-so, not near as powerful as if I were to have Cheryl call and say, hey, Mark Ludwig from Americans for Equal Shared Parenting, he's going to be in Washington, D.C., blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, it's a third party edifying me. Now I have a little more credibility. Ooh, that's the scheduler. They don't know she's a friend of mine, sort of helping out. So we're going to need some of you guys to try and figure out who is really good at potentially being a scheduler to schedule appointments for the people that are the actual negotiators. You've got to have people that are good at the verbiage and the bill writing. I highly encourage you, when we do get to that point, I'll be coordinating with you guys with Jeremy Roberts. I've been in 17 states this year in legislation. I'll tell you what, the best in the country that we have is Jeremy Roberts out of St. Louis. So we need to get, once you get your team in place to write the bills, Jeremy is the guy that's a great guy to bounce ideas off of. And he's always willing to help. We already mentioned the tally sheet. I think Kenny was talking at one point about creating spreadsheets, but you're going to need somebody can create a tally sheet of every single legislator. On a dark green is going to be, are they 100% in favor? Are they light green? That means they're likely yes. Are they yellow, which means they could go either way? Are they orange, which means they're leaning no, and red is no. But you got to have that color-coded sheet. We need to know, are they Republican or Democrat? What is their hot-button issue? Who have we talked to, and when was the last time we talked to them? After a while of meeting with legislators, you forget who you talked to. I was just in Michigan the other day, and I met with I don't know how many in the period of one day, none of whom I'd ever met before. And to be honest, if you ask me, the only one I met with the Speaker of the House in the morning. That's the only one out of all the ones I met with I can remember right now. So you've got to write it down, or you're going to get them all jumbled at the end. You've also got to realize, too, there's going to be a bunch of different areas, and a lot of these I understand everyone has a passion. My personal view, and some of you may disagree, and I'm okay with that, I think that the first bill to try and get through is some kind of a 50-50 rebuttable presumption bill. It's the easiest bill because that one is so easy to focus on the children without having to go through a lot of explanation. There's a lot of other issues that are important, trust me, like parental alienation, like the silver bullet, like child support issues. But the easiest one, I believe, is to get that through. Once you get one, it's almost like the 4-minute mile. It's going to be so much easier to throw some more through the door. But you've got to focus all your efforts on one bill. If you get too many bills going, and like I said, it's not that the other issues aren't important. But to a legislator who's having a hard enough time understanding why a child should have equal access to both parents, try explaining the concept of parental alienation to somebody who's never been through it. Yeah. It's just going to be too much of an education process to go through. And think of it, for most of us, until it happened to us, would we have even understood it? I'll just be the first one to admit, I would have never believed it if somebody told me everything that I've been through. I would have never believed it. So it's going to be very hard for a legislator. So the easiest one is every legislator knows somebody at their church, their neighborhood, somebody they used to work with who's been through a divorce, and one of those parents probably has every other weekend. So they can relate. It's just so much easier to pull them in with that. Last thing on the, before we shut everything off, is make sure you understand the rules of the game when you're talking to legislators. It's a passionate issue for all of us. I forget who it was that mentioned it. If you take somebody steals your car, that'll get you a little bit upset. But if somebody steals your child, all emotion is gone at that point. You just lost all control. And so it's such a passionate issue, but you have to remember, you have to understand the rules of the game. I'm not a big golfer, but from what I understand, when a golfer is getting ready to tee it up, you don't go, woo! Go for it! Woo! Hope you get a hole in one. No, usually from what I've seen, they're real quiet around the golf course, which is probably why I don't golf. In my mind, it would be a lot more fun if we could just take a shotgun and let's just shoot the thing while it's in there. A lot more fun of a game than just, apologies to all golfers, but I just think this seems like the boringest game.
You just made all the gun grabbers mad.
If I'm going to play games, somebody has to be able to get hurt in it. But anyway, so understand the rules of the game. Whether we like it or not, some people say, well, are you sucking up to legislators? Not at all. But whether you like it or not, we don't have a vote on a judicial committee hearing. We don't have a vote on the floor. The legislators are the only one. So whether you like it or not, we need their help. Imagine if you're at an enemy of war or a prisoner of war camp, and a guy's holding a gun to your head. Are you going to tell him all the reason why he's wrong and what an idiot he is and how dare you when his finger's on the trigger? Pretty stupid thing to do. You know, you're going to win the battle, but you lose the war. You're going to get shot. So the key is to understand, there's times, I agree, it's extremely frustrating, but you can't attack legislators. Okay, we have several states, and I'll get to that in a second. Matter of fact, why don't we do that? If everybody doesn't mind, if you can do me a huge favor and turn off, and do me a favor, show your phone to your neighbors so everybody knows that everybody's phone's off. Because I'm going to say some things that really, hopefully, will not be said that I've never shared in rooms before. So I need everybody to turn your recorders off.